My stepson said, "You're just here to fund our life." So I unplugged the fund and watched them realize who paid the Wi-Fi. The screen froze at loading. My name's Jacob. I'm 47 years old, live just outside Austin in a one-story home with gutters that always clog after it rains and grass that grows faster than I care to mow. I run a modest IT consulting business from the living room. Dual monitors, a worn-down mechanical keyboard, and a desk stained with coffee rings older than some of my clients. I don't go looking for conflict. I believe in systems, routines, and leaving things better than you found them. In short, I like order. 6 years ago, I married Becca. She was warm, sharp-witted, and carried a softness that drew people in. She also came with a 13-year-old son named Trevor and a long, invisible ledger of unspoken terms. His father, Nate, was a name mentioned only when things broke. He hadn't been in Trevor's life in any meaningful way for years. Occasionally, his face would pop up in a tagged photo, standing with a fishing pole, beer in hand, smiling like he'd earned it. He hadn't. Nate was a ghost with a last name, a man who sent birthday texts once in a while. No punctuation, no love, and who vanished when it came time to show up in real life. I knew what I was walking into, or at least I thought I did. I made a promise to myself the day Becca and I got serious. I wouldn't try to replace Trevor's father. I'd earn my place slowly, honestly. I fixed his laptops, bought his sports equipment, taught him how to navigate the bus routes when Becca was working late. I sat in the back row of his school plays. I paid for braces when the insurance fell short. I figured if I kept showing up, kept doing the right thing, respect would come. But I misunderstood the equation. Respect doesn't grow from effort alone. Sometimes it has to be demanded, and I never demanded anything. In the beginning, I let the small things slide. Trevor would come home and walk past me without a word. If I asked him about his day, I'd get a shrug, maybe a fine. He rarely looked me in the eyes. When we sat down to eat, he'd stay silent or retreat to his room, unless Becca insisted he stay at the table. Even then, he'd chew like the food was an obligation. Becca chalked it up to adolescence. "Teenage boys," she'd say, half apologetic. "They'll come around eventually." I wanted to believe that. I did believe that, for far too long. He never came around. I became dude to him, not Jacob, not even the sterile stepdad. Just dude, tossed out with a voice flat as concrete. It wasn't playful. It was dismissive. Told me where I stood. I remember the first real warning sign. It was subtle, like they always are. I opened Netflix one night and found my profile missing. Deleted. In its place was a new one labeled extra. I laughed at the time, like a man being mugged and pretending the knife was a joke. Becca said Trevor probably didn't mean anything by it. "Kids and their sense of humor," she offered without conviction. Still, I paid the bill. I always did. The Wi-Fi, the groceries, the endless parade of Amazon boxes. That was all me. New phone screens, Spotify Premium, Uber Eats. When his laptop froze the night before finals, I was the one crawling on the floor, swapping out RAM in the dark. He never said thank you. Not once. Becca tried to nudge him. He'd grunt, then vanish back into his world. I kept telling myself, this is what stepfatherhood looks like. Quiet loyalty. I thought the value of a man could be found in his willingness to give without keeping score. But eventually, I looked at the scoreboard and realized I was losing by every measure. There was a weekend, quiet, unremarkable, when the truth surfaced like a cracked pipe beneath a clean floor. I came home early from a client consult. The house was quiet. I stepped inside and heard Trevor's voice from upstairs, half shouting over a headset, oblivious to anything outside his glowing screen. "He's basically our ATM," he said, laughing. "Just don't piss him off till I get the new iPhone." That was it. Just that. Not shouted. Not in anger. Just casual. Matter of fact. The way you might say, "It's raining," or "We're out of milk." I stood at the foot of the stairs, waiting for something in me to react. But nothing came. No fury. No heartbreak. Just a silence I'd never heard before in that house. A silence that told me exactly how deep the rot went. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't tell Becca. Instead, I watched them both. I watched how Trevor only listened when Becca repeated my words. How he'd look to her for confirmation even when I was the one handing him what he asked for. I watched her tiptoe around his moods, watched her fill in the silence after he ignored me. And I saw something I hadn't wanted to admit. She didn't just allow the disrespect. She enabled it. There were 1,000 small betrayals, and I had excused every one of them. I had said yes when I should have asked why. I had shown up when I should have stepped back. I had funded his life, his comforts, his assumptions, and in doing so, I had erased myself. I started keeping a spreadsheet, just for myself. A quiet act of reckoning. Every dollar spent on Trevor, from the $4,000 laptop to the $19 socks he wanted from some designer brand. The total rose like a tide swallowing the shore. Over $78,000, not including rent, utilities, or food. $78,000 for a child who saw me as a transaction. For a woman who never once said, "He shouldn't speak to you like that." One night, I tried talking to Becca about it, carefully, without blame. I told her I felt like a stranger in my own house. She nodded, said she understood, promised things would change. They didn't. And then came the dinner. The one where I asked Trevor to clear his plate, nothing major. A basic request. He looked me dead in the face and said, "You're just here to fund our life." Just that. 7 words. Becca looked down. Said nothing. I stood, took my plate to the sink, and washed it in silence. That was the moment the screen froze. The illusion broke. I saw the truth as it was, not as I had hoped it would become. It was all good while I played dad. While I paid. While I stayed quiet. While I let them script the story of our household around my silence. But I had finally learned. Playing dad isn't the same as being one. And sometimes, the only thing worse than being invisible is realizing you were never seen at all. I wish I could tell you it was rage that made me do it. That I threw the dinner plate across the room, shouted curses, told them both what I really thought. But I didn't. That would have meant they got something real from me. What they got instead was silence. And silence, as I'd come to learn, was louder than anything I could have shouted. After that dinner, after Trevor looked me in the eye and said I was just here to fund their life, I sat in the garage, lights off, engine cold. Just me and the stale air. I thought about all the jobs I'd turned down because I didn't want to miss his soccer games. About the nights I stayed up rebuilding his gaming rig while he slept like a prince. About the time I canceled a client trip because Becca said he had the flu and needed someone around. All of it. The little sacrifices that never earned me anything but rolled eyes and muttered jokes. They thought I wouldn't do it. That I didn't have it in me to draw a line. They were wrong. It started with the Wi-Fi. I waited until I heard Trevor stomping down the hallway the next morning, then unplugged the router. Not a hard reset, just a slow, deliberate removal of power. The LED lights blinked off like they knew what was coming. By the time his door swung open, I was already in the kitchen making coffee. "Internet's down," he said, more accusation than observation. "Yeah," I said. "It is." He stood there waiting for more, like I was supposed to leap into action. When I didn't, he frowned. "Well, can you fix it? I've got class." "I'll get to it," I said. Eventually. That was the first crack. He disappeared back into his room, and within minutes I could hear the sounds of him trying everything. Resetting, unplugging, plugging back in. The frustration in his voice was almost musical. When Becca got home, he went straight to her. I heard the same question, the same tone. She came to me, holding her phone like it was evidence in a murder case. "Hey, Trevor says the Wi-Fi's out." "Yup." She blinked. "And?" I shut it off. A pause. Why?" "Because I'm done funding disrespect." She laughed at first, not because she thought it was funny, but because she didn't believe me. Not really. She thought this was some game, some midlife protest. When I didn't join her in the joke, her expression changed. "Jacob, he needs the internet for school. And I needed a baseline of respect. Guess we both don't get what we want." She didn't answer, just turned, muttering something under her breath as she walked away. That night I took it further. I sat down at my computer and pulled up every account I had been using to keep the household running. Every subscription, every bill, every auto payment that flowed from my accounts into their lives without thanks. Netflix, DoorDash, Trevor's Xbox Game Pass, his gym membership, his Spotify Premium, gone. One click at a time, I watched the digital umbilical cord shrivel. Then came the bank accounts. I logged into the joint card Becca used for groceries and gas. Froze it. Then the debit card Trevor used when he went out with his friends. Froze that too. I even paused the tuition autodraft for the community college classes he was barely passing. The power wasn't in the money. It was in the clarity. In knowing, for once, that I wasn't going to bankroll my own erasure. They didn't notice at first. Systems take time to fall apart. The Netflix didn't get canceled until the billing cycle ended. The Uber Eats app didn't crash until Trevor tried ordering wings and got a payment failed message. The Xbox took 3 days to realize the subscription had lapsed. But when it did, oh, the panic. Jacob. Becca called from the living room, holding up her phone. Did the card get declined? Which one? I asked. DoorDash. I was trying to get dinner. I stopped paying for it. She stared at me, waiting for the punchline. It's not a joke, I said. The look on her face. That's when I knew she finally understood. Trevor came down a few hours later, his face red. Phone clenched in his hand. Did you cancel my stuff? Yes. What the hell? I'm not funding this anymore. This? He sneered. What is this? This ungrateful little kingdom you and your mother have been ruling. This charade where I pay for everything and get treated like a stranger. I never asked you to. Exactly, I said. You never asked. You just took. The words landed harder than I expected. For a second, he looked stunned. Then the anger returned. You don't have the right. I stepped closer, close enough that he had to tilt his chin to keep eye contact. I have every right, because up until now it was generosity. From here on out it's a choice, and I'm choosing no. He stormed back to his room, slamming the door with all the force of someone trying to build a wall with noise. Becca followed me into the kitchen, her voice lowered now. Jacob, come on. This isn't you. You're right. This isn't who I was. That man's gone. Over what? Some stupid comment? He's a kid. He's almost 20. And no, it wasn't one comment. It was years of them. It was your silence every time he looked through me. It was every meal he refused to thank me for. Every time you used my money to keep him comfortable while I got nothing but eye rolls and attitude. She sat at the table, face pale, hands trembling just a little. What do you want? She asked. Respect. Or distance. The next few days turned the house into a war zone. Not the loud, explosive kind. The Cold War kind. Whispers. Door slams. Passive-aggressive clinking of silverware. Becca tried to mediate, but her heart wasn't in it. She was too afraid to pick a side. Trevor tried bargaining. First with attitude, then with awkward politeness. Hey, dude, can I get $20 for gas? I shook my head. You got a job? He didn't answer. Then he tried appealing to Becca. Mom, can't you talk to him? I heard her whisper back. I've tried. He started leaving the house more. Coming home later. But not before checking the fridge. Not before asking if the internet was back. It wasn't. I gave him access to a separate Wi-Fi network. Throttled. Schoolwork only. No games, no streaming. Becca protested until I handed her the bills. You want to pay for it, be my guest. She didn't. And then something unexpected happened. Trevor brought me his old guitar. Dusty. 2 strings missing. A crack near the bridge. Can you fix it? I looked at him. No smirk. No attitude. Just a question. An ask. Find the strings yourself. I'll show you how. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't connection. But it was the first time he'd come to me not expecting the world to be handed over without effort. We worked on it. Quietly. I didn't praise him. He didn't thank me. But there was something in the silence that didn't feel like contempt. Becca started cooking more. Less takeout. More casseroles. She stopped defending Trevor's moods, started asking how much things cost before suggesting them. The house didn't heal. Not fully. But the static faded. The entitlement cracked. And for the first time, I heard what the house sounded like when it wasn't running on the fumes of unspoken resentment. It was quiet, not peaceful, but honest. The thing about silence is that once you stop fearing it, it becomes a mirror. The noise was gone now. No clatter of door slams, no muttered insults behind hallway walls. What remained was the sound of plates being washed, footsteps up the stairs, the soft flick of a light switch, the ordinary things that had once been buried beneath resentment. But silence doesn't fix what came before it. It only exposes it. The third week after I cut the cords, the house had changed shape. Becca was quieter. Not defeated, but smaller. She used to fill space with nervous energy, humming while cooking, asking Trevor about school with the fake optimism of someone trying to outrun the truth. Now she moved slowly, like someone rearranging furniture in a room that no longer belonged to her. I noticed the way she lingered near me now. Not affectionate, not warm, just present, like a question she didn't know how to ask. Trevor, meanwhile, was learning how money actually works. It started with little things. The first time he tried to download a movie and couldn't. The first time he realized the Spotify playlist he loved was interrupted by ads. The night he came home holding a Chick-fil-A bag and said, "They wouldn't let me use Apple Pay, card declined." "Then maybe it's time you get a job," I said, without looking up from my laptop. He didn't argue, didn't stomp, just disappeared into his room and closed the door with an uncharacteristic gentleness. I don't know if that hurt more than the shouting would've. A few days later, I saw him on the patio with his laptop. I walked by to take the trash out and he called out, voice tentative, cautious. "Hey, Jacob." I turned. "Do you know how to write a resume?" That word, my name, not dude, not man, landed like a stone in a still pond. I said nothing, just nodded. Later that night, we sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he once told me I was just a walking wallet. Now he leaned over his screen, typing slowly, painfully. "What do I put under experience?" I looked at the blank document. "You ever mow lawns? Shovel snow?" He nodded. "Couple times. Helped Mr. Donnelly next door fix his fence once." Start there. He worked. I helped. The kitchen stayed quiet. That night, after he went to bed, Becca walked in, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of tea. She placed one in front of me. "You really think this is going to change him?" she asked. I took a sip. "I don't know. But I know this. I can't keep pretending the way things were was okay." She nodded. Her eyes looked tired. "I should have spoken up more," she said. "When he disrespected you. When I let it slide." I didn't respond. What was there to say? That silence was easier? That siding with blood always feels safer than siding with marriage? That night, for the first time in months, we slept with the door open. Weeks passed. Trevor got hired at a hardware store 2 blocks away. Part-time. Minimum wage. The kind of job that gives you sore feet and makes you rethink what things are worth. He came home smelling like sawdust and metal. For the first time, he asked me where we kept the Advil. His back hurt. "You're 17, I said. He shrugged. "So?" He started buying his own snacks, paid for his own phone plan, recharged his Metro card with his own debit account. No more sneaking through my wallet. No more asking his mom to borrow and never return. One afternoon, he walked into my office, the space he used to avoid like a plague, held something in his hand, a folded piece of paper. "I got my first paycheck," he said. "Good," I said. "I want to give you some for the Wi-Fi." I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't joking, wasn't posturing. "It's not about the money," I said. "It's about learning the value of what things cost." He nodded. "I know, but still, it's yours." He placed the folded bill on my desk and left. I didn't touch it, just let it sit there like a relic. That night, Becca came into the office after he'd gone to bed. "I didn't think he had that in him," she whispered. "Neither did I. But it took this. It took you cutting him off." No, I said. It took me finally respecting myself. She looked away like the words stung. You think it's too late? She asked. For what? For us. For fixing the way we let this house fall apart. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the ceiling. The quiet hummed around us. I think it's only too late if we keep pretending nothing needed fixing. She didn't smile, but her hand found mine. The next morning, Trevor was already up before me, making eggs. Badly. The pan was too hot, and the eggs stuck to the surface in a lumpy mess. Want some? He asked. Sure, I said. We sat at the table in silence. He scraped the last of the eggs onto his plate and looked up. I've been thinking about college, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Not sure if it's for me. Might look into trade work. HVAC, maybe welding. I nodded. It's good work. Honest. Yeah. A pause. I know I was a dick, he said. I kept my face still. I said stuff. About you. To you. I didn't mean all of it. All of it? I asked. He smiled, just barely. Okay, I meant most of it. But I didn't get it back then. And now? Now I do. I waited. You didn't have to do any of what you did. You could have walked. Most guys would have. I thought about it, I admitted. He looked away, biting his lip. I wouldn't have blamed you. That was the moment I felt something shift. Not fully. Not fixed. But shifted. Later that day, I found a card in my inbox. No envelope. Just a single folded piece of cardstock tucked under my keyboard. Inside, handwritten, in Trevor's jagged print. Thanks for cutting the Wi-Fi. Thanks for turning my brain back on. Thanks for sticking around. Your son. Not stepson. Son. I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed it in the drawer beneath my desk, next to the old receipts and long-expired warranties. A quiet reminder that sometimes the bill does come due. But sometimes, just sometimes, the ones who owe you finally learn to pay you back. 3 months later, the house looked the same. The same scuffed baseboards, the same wobbly dining chair, the same rusting mailbox I kept promising to replace, but it felt different. It was quieter, but not the cold, passive silence from before. This quiet was deliberate, intentional, the kind that comes when people are learning to listen. Trevor was still Trevor, still rolled his eyes sometimes, still muttered under his breath when chores piled up. But now he did the chores. Without a reminder, he took out the trash, washed his own dishes, bought his own toothpaste. He didn't thank me every time, but he didn't need to, because now he understood the cost of not doing it. He started paying for his own phone bill, got a part-time second job stocking shelves at night. He was tired a lot, but there was a different kind of weight on his shoulders now. Not entitlement, responsibility. I didn't ask for apologies. I didn't go looking for vindication. I didn't keep a scoreboard because if I had, it wouldn't have mattered. I would have won by a landslide. That wasn't the point anymore. One Friday evening, we were both sitting on the porch, me with a beer, him with a soda. The sky was starting to dim, painted in oranges and bruised purples. He looked over at me, then back at the sky. You're not just some guy, he said. I didn't move. You actually showed up. I didn't say thank you. I didn't tell him how long I'd waited to hear something like that. I just nodded once, slow and deliberate. That was enough. Becca, too, had changed in small ways. She no longer corrected Trevor when I asked him to do something. She just stood back and let him answer. She cooked more, asked before spending, stopped treating my patience like a tap that never runs dry. Her eyes held something different now. Not guilt, not quite regret. Maybe understanding. We didn't talk about the past much. Didn't revisit the night I shut the power off to our invisible kingdom. But its shadow lived in everything, in how we spoke, how we paused, how we no longer assumed anything was owed. Then one afternoon, I came home from a client visit and saw a strange envelope on the kitchen table. No address, no name. Inside, a printed tuition bill paid in full. I stared at it for a long time. When Trevor walked in and saw me holding it, he shrugged. I didn't want to ask, he said. So I saved up. It'll take a while, but I can manage the rest. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. He didn't tell me it was hard. Didn't list excuses or beg for help. He just handled it, like a man. Like someone who had finally understood the weight of sacrifice. Later that night, I walked past his room and saw him asleep. His work uniform still on, one shoe still tied. The light from his phone glowed across the wall. I wanted to knock, to say something, but I didn't. I let the moment stay intact. A week later, Becca handed me a photo. Trevor, age 12, holding a soccer ball, eyes squinting into the sun. I had never seen it before. He used to keep this in his drawer, she said. I found it when I was cleaning. Thought maybe you should have it. I held it for a long time, ran my fingers over the edges, wondered what that boy would have said if someone told him how this story would unfold. Wondered what I would have said to myself 6 years ago, walking into a life already in progress. Would I have done it again? Maybe, maybe not. But I did it, and I didn't run. That's something. Trevor still doesn't call me Dad. Not out loud. Not every day. But sometimes when he's talking to someone else, when he thinks I can't hear, I catch it. My dad says this router's a beast. My dad knows how to fix that. I'll ask him. Not stepdad. Not dude. Not Jacob. Just Dad. It doesn't come with fanfare. It doesn't erase the years that came before. But it lands differently. Like a note that finally resolves after years of dissonance. I don't need a parade. I don't need to be the hero. I just wanted a place in the story. And I earned it the hard way. Some people will say I went too far. That cutting him off was cruel. That teaching respect with a financial knife is petty. Even abusive. Let them say it. They weren't the ones who sat at a table night after night, invisible. Who paid the bills while being called a stranger. Who showed up every day and still got told they weren't enough. I was enough. I always was. They just had to learn it the hard way. There's a line we cross as men, as stepfathers, where we stop trying to be accepted and start requiring respect. Where we stop asking for inclusion and start demanding accountability. I crossed that line, and I've never looked back. Trevor will never forget what I did. And that's the point. I didn't do it to be loved. I did it so he'd understand what love actually costs. I did it because the moment a man starts paying for everything without being respected, he stops being a provider and starts being a fool. And I was done being a fool. So now I ask you, whoever's reading this, whoever's sitting in that same chair I once did, was I wrong? Was I cruel for cutting the Wi-Fi, for freezing the cards, for turning off the faucet that kept a thankless house afloat? Or was it the only way left to teach them that respect isn't a bonus? It's the bill? And if it was your house, if it was your name on every receipt, your hands in every fix, your wallet behind every meal, would you have endured longer? Or would you have finally done what I did? Would you have walked into the room and said, no more, the free ride ends now. Not out of hate, not out of spite, but because if I'm going to keep giving, I deserve to be seen. So tell me, would you have kept paying? Or would you have finally made them pay attention?